In Amanda Ripley's The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way, she follows 3 students to find out why Finland, South Korea, and Poland may be some of the smartest countries in the world. In Chapter 4, titled A Math Problem, Amanda Ripley started off by talking about Tom, a foreign exchange student from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, who now lives in Poland. Tom, like many others, struggles with math. The United States placed 26th in the world on average in math. Math is an important subject to understand because it is the language of logic. Ripley later compares how education differs in Pennsylvania and Poland. Tom noticed, unlike in America, students weren't allowed to use calculators in Polish math classes. Teachers in Poland also announced test scores in front of the whole class where students rarely score highly. Ripley wrote that kids in Poland were used to failing. Because of this, I believe that the students may be less likely to give up compared to Americans who fail once and avoid that subject at all costs. Next, Chapter 4 mentions Eric in Korea, originally from Minnesota. Unlike Tom, he actually enjoys math, which could be related to Minnesota's higher test scores. In 2007, Minnesota elementary students rocked a major international math test, performing at about the same level as kids in Japan. Minnesota officials also agreed on a single set of clear targeted standards. Shortly after, other states followed Minnesota's lead. I believe that if America followed other countries, they could excel in math too. In order to do so, schools need to challenge students at an earlier age. Ripley wrote, compared to countries around the world, the typical 8th grade math class in the U.S. featured 6th and 7th grade content. By the same measuring stick, the highest performing countries taught 8th graders 9th grade math. Another way to improve America's math scores is stopping repetition. Teachers have had to deal with kids coming into their classroom every fall with different paths in education. And lastly, American textbooks are far too long for students to actually learn in the time they have that year. Ripley wrote, internationally, the average 8th grade math textbook was 335 pages long, and the U.S. 8th grade math textbooks average 800 pages. This is far too much information for a student to comprehend. To finish off, I want to answer 2 questions. First being how my personal experience has related to this chapter. I remember in school every year I repeatedly learned the same topics over and over every year. In Chapter 4, Ripley writes about how students learn about fractions every single year from 1st to 8th grade. Every year. This reputation can cause boredom. I'm sure it did for you like it did for myself. If education developed, students could learn just as fast as those in higher scoring countries. As a teacher, I hope to make an impact in education and make sure that my students don't get this boredom by asking what they learned the past year so we don't relearn it, or maybe standards will develop so I don't have to do that for myself. Which leads me to the second question. What are the responsibilities of an individual and society in regards to public school education? Society must make sure they vote on bills and school boards to make sure change occurs. If this happens, standards could be normalized and people wouldn't have to keep learning or have difficulty when they move to learn or catch up.